which is helping others. I'm delighted to welcome Aisling McGreevy to the You and Your Business studio. Hi, Aisling.
Hi, Alec. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I'm really looking forward to this. We had some interesting chats just before we started, so I'm dying to see where we take it. But unfortunately, I'm going to take you back to that last year in school just to discover, were you the academic or were you the person who wanted to travel the world, or really were you looking to find yourself at some place?
I had no idea when I was leaving school where I wanted to go. And thankfully, I was given the opportunity to go to Germany for a year as an au pair.
Oh, right.
Which was really, really interesting. Obviously, the added advantage, I learned German. And it was an interesting year because it was at a time when the postal strike hit in Ireland.
Wow.
And that's a long time ago, I know. And so I had no communication with anyone at home for months on end. So it was an interesting time.
And it's amazing with sort of COVID and people feeling distanced. My goodness, that must have felt quite lonely for you.
It was, because back then the post was also working on the telephones. And so there was no phone calls, no post, no nothing.
The old P&T.
The old P&T, exactly.
All right. So you're in Germany, you'd learned fluent German, fantastic. So what happened then? Did you travel further or did you come back home?
I came back home, and I needed to get some kind of a qualification, and I ended up in the language center doing French, German and typing, and came out of that qualified as a bilingual secretary with no experience as a bilingual secretary, and overqualified for a regular secretarial job, which I didn't really want anyway. But I had come from a business background, and my father used to always say, there's always a job here for you, which I reluctantly took up while looking much further afield. And his business was in men's clothing, but he was quite entrepreneurial and had diversified into different aspects of business, including the wool business. He used to get the hanks of Aran wool and give them to the knitters, and they'd make up the jumpers for him. And it was at a time when the Icelandic jumpers came in. And so he handed me the wool, the needles and the pattern. And he said, right, figure this one out. And I did. And started to sell it. It was doing nicely. And I said, I need to order more. And he said, okay, do the order and let me know how much it comes to. And it came to £1,000 at the time. And he said, my God, we're never going to sell all that. I said, yes, we are. And I think that was the beginning of my my challenges started. And I thought, I can do this.
Yeah, so you like a challenge thrown in front of you.
I do. I love a challenge. And when you have a challenge, you've something to aim for. And I suppose I am the person that will say, I'll try it. When you have all the people say, no, that won't work. I say, yes, it will.
That's what you want. Positive attitude.
Exactly.
So interesting. I mean, you find yourself in a completely different world. I suppose it must be great to have somebody from the family who's an entrepreneurial skill. I think today they call it agile. In those days, it just meant adapting to whatever the market needed.
Yes. And when you have somebody like that in your corner, it means so much. At different times in my life, I've had other people that have mentored me along the way as well. And it just gives you that extra confidence. I suppose that safety net that you know that you will give it a go and it'll work out. I moved out of the home work and went to the College of Marketing.
Right.
And that was good. Learned everything there was to learn about business as such. And when I left there, I joined the Switzer group, working in Galway for a while, and then joined the management trainee group of Switzers and covered all of the stores, working with the managing director down to organising the cleaners. So it was an excellent education in how a business is run from top to bottom.
And if we take just going back to your sort of college in marketing, where was that based at the time? Do you mind me asking?
In, oh gosh,
wasn't Mountjoy Square or somewhere like
No,
that?
it wasn't the Mountjoy Square one. It was, where the Pro Cathedral is.
I know, Sackville Street, down along there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the side one down there. I know where
Yeah.
you're talking about. No,
Yes.
that's fantastic. And I mean, what did you pick up there? I mean, had you a passion for anything in particular that you were doing in the whole marketing side?
Yes, I loved the whole, I suppose what I loved most was the roundedness of the course I was on, because we did everything from accountancy right down to window displays.
All right.
And so there's a little bit of creative side in me that was obviously trying to come out. And so I realized that business just didn't have to be just business. It could be so much more.
And it's good that they taught some of the business skills as well. I mean, you're fortunate enough to have a father who had a lot of those ingrained into you as well. So it must be nice. And then the Switzers group, how did that come about?
I was working in Moons, and every sort of 2 years or so, they would advertise for management trainees. Right. And I applied and said whatever I said to the personnel director, and he thought, right, okay, Aisling, you're on the course this year. And it was a wonderful experience. We were brought through every aspect of business. And on one occasion, we were pulled in to do what they called number crunching with the managing director. And he was Jimmy Wood at the time. And we were all sitting around the board table and working away. Before they had computers that would do it all for you now. And I was quietly working away, and he said to me, Aisling, he said, you're very quiet. You either know everything, which I doubt, or he said, you're stuck on something. And I said, well, there is one thing, right? What is it? And he jumped up, came over to me, sorted me out, and everything went ahead then. And it said to me, don't ever stop because you've got an obstacle in your way. Ask for help, because someone will always have the answer.
Yes. And it's a true lesson that business people should learn in life. There's loads of help out there if you just ask.
Well, that's it. And the thing about being in business, you're never going to be brilliant at everything.
No.
No. And there's always someone who will help you in the areas that you can't do.
And were you finding, I mean, you had a nice kind of blended mix between the family business and now into Switzers, which are a much larger retail group. And were you finding a new passion for anything here in particular?
I suppose what I saw with this is that big as possible. And that no matter, you start off small, but you can actually grow a business to whatever size you might want. And as I look back at the other things I've done as a result, I realized that actually that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned along the way. When you have, but when you have a passion for something, that sort of shines through. And while I was doing what I was doing business-wise, there was always something missing from where I was focused, and that was having the true passion in it of helping people. When you're selling them something, you're selling them something that they want, but when you sell them something that they actually that benefits them, it has a far bigger effect on their lives and on your life, because they go away happy. When I left Switzers, I did a couple of different jobs, and none of them were actually doing anything for me. None of them were making my life.
Sure. They weren't fulfilling your life.
They weren't lighting me up at all. Yeah. And so I was in with an employment agency one day, and she said to me, would you like something off the wall? And I said, yes, please. And I started a job in the flower market with a floral sundries company. And I have to say, it was a different gear change, up at 6 o'clock every morning. And but it was wonderful because I was supplying the florists with everything they needed except fresh flowers. Okay. So my whole creative side was able to develop here.
It had found a new world. But if you're just joining us now, you're listening to me, Alec, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my guest today is Ashley McGreevy, and she's just taken on a job which is off the wall, I suppose, as she said herself. So tell us more about the flower markets being up at such an unearthly time.
Yes, and people who knew me at the time sort of said, "Oh my gosh, Ashley, you're not a morning person. How are you managing?" And I have to say, it took me a while to get used to the early mornings, but the buzz down around the Smithfield Market in the morning, like with big 40-foot containers and forklifts charging around the place, it could be quite chaotic. I know it's a different picture there now, but at the time it was wonderful. And we were more progressive than some of the other suppliers in the area, and we brought in different items, and it was always a challenge. We'd bring in something that might not be your normal, and decide, is this going to sell? And it always did. Because
the challenge was to sell it, wasn't it?
It was. But sometimes they weren't what you think everybody was going to buy. There was one item in particular, and it was called like a butterfly. And when we ordered it, I said to Brona, I said, this one is going to fly out the door. And she said, oh, take it easy, just maybe buy one box. And there was about 60 pieces in a box. It was gone within 2 days.
Nice.
So I think we were buying 60 boxes the next time, and but it was wonderful to have a product that hadn't been there before that actually sold so well. So it's yeah.
Fantastic. So where were you going to head off to next?
Well, while I worked there, I loved it. But it came at a time when my dad passed away.
No.
And I suppose I was just unsettled, as can be the case when we have any kind of a big change in our lives. And I got offered a job in Galway. Mayo is my hometown, or my home county, should I say. And I got offered this job in Galway, and it was completely the opposite to where I'd been, the hustle and bustle and sort of the market, to a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 job, no pressure, no hassle. And I thought, that's exactly what I need. But after a very short time, I realized I was bored silly.
Yeah, nice.
And I thought, what can I do? And the company that I had worked for at the markets, we used to supply baskets, hamper baskets coming up to Christmas. And we didn't supply anyone in the West. And I thought, that's what I could do. So I tried to sub-wholesale from them, but that didn't work out. So I thought, right, let's just go straight to the suppliers, the importers in London. And I rang them, and the guy there said, Aisling, I always knew we'd hear from you again.
Right.
And so I started to import the baskets from him, go out to my customers lunchtimes and Saturdays, and supply them with baskets. And I thought, right, Aisling, let's just do this. I mean, it's starting to move. It's what you're good at. So I started going over to Birmingham, approaching different companies, and became an agent, including the basket company. And so I started something that I thought was small, and ended up, I covered all of 32 counties, and had a really good business running for quite a few years. At one stage, I used to be selective about the agencies I worked with. I only liked to sell really nice things.
Sure.
And I remember at one stage during the Celtic Tiger, companies, like I had about 14 different companies all wanting me to take on their products. And I'm going, no, I'm not doing it. And I had a policy with my customers at the time that I would only sell them what I wanted to sell them. And when they would look for more, I would say, no, you have enough.
Right. And
my reasoning behind that is that if I came back to them in 4 weeks' time and it was still sitting on the shelves, they'd say to me, oh, that's not selling. And it was because they'd bought too much, not because it wasn't selling.
Yeah, and there's a lesson there for a lot of people, because, as you know, the sort of imprimatur for a lot of salespeople is to push as much as they can onto somebody.
Yeah.
But when you recognize it from the other side, there's a business logic to it.
Yes, and I suppose because I had grown up in the business environment, I knew what I didn't want to happen. I knew what their stock had to look fresh the whole time. So it was interesting. I suppose a lot of people thought it was reverse psychology, but it was actually me being careful about not flooding the market with something that would then sit there.
Yes. And again, as you said, it seemed like reverse psychology, but there was a logic in it that benefited you, and hence you grew the business through it.
Yes. And so knowing the business from both sides was really helpful.
So where to next? What's happening?
Well, as we all know, things were brilliant during the Celtic Tiger. Everything was moving fast and furious, and I loved every minute of it. And then things started to slow down, and I got myself so stressed because where I came from, numerous calls every day, to nobody wanting anything. And I ended up with heart palpitations. So I went to my doctor, and she said to me, "What about a career change?" And I said, "But I love my job." And she said, "But you're not working at your job. You're just stressing about it." And so the following week, I signed up for a course in reflexology.
Wow. Why reflexology? Tell me what led you into that world.
Well, the interesting thing, I have no idea why, Alec, because I actually used to hate anyone to touch my feet. But I innocently thought at the time that I could do the reflexology without having anyone touch my feet. But I soon discovered in the training that we work on, different students work on each other. So I used to have to just grin and bear it every time somebody touched my feet. But the amazing thing about reflexology is that it works on every aspect of the body, and the feet don't lie. They are extraordinary, and they tell you everything. When I was doing my case studies, I had worked with a few people, and they would give me their case history, and I would then say, "And what about, I don't know, something with your elbow, or have you had an issue with your left hip?" And they'd go, "How do you know that?" And I go, "Your feet are telling me." So reflexology was wonderful. I had done Reiki at this stage already, but I hadn't. I'd actually done Reiki a couple of years earlier, at a time when I suppose I was still reaching out. And when I say I was reaching out, it was while the Celtic Tiger was going on. I decided I was going to learn how to fly.
All right, as you do.
As you do. I know. And when you are up in the sky, there is a certain, I suppose, angelic feeling about it.
Right.
Because you're up there with a lump of metal looking out at the clouds. And so there's no place nicer in the whole wide world on a calm day. Not necessarily on a blustery day when you're trying to hold on to the controls, but on a calm day. And it was around that time I did my Reiki. And so reflexology just seemed to be the next thing for me to do. And from the reflexology, I suppose I just went on to continue to do so many other modalities that just seemed right at the time. I went on to do integrated energy therapy, which is similar to Reiki. And it works with the angelic realm. And
fantastic. If you're just joining me now, we're listening to me, Alec, on 103.2 Dublin City FM, where my guest today is actually McGreevy, who has more than 40 years of business experience. But we're just talking about, she's transitioned into a place that she, I suppose, was always waiting for her, something that you had a real passion for, Aisling. Take us back into what you were just saying there about Reiki, and we're talking about this whole angelic feeling.
Yeah. Now, I know when I say angelic, it might, for some people, they might think, oh, it's I don't know, Holy Mary religion. It's not. It's that feeling of having a spiritual experience. And for me, that's, I suppose it is my passion. When we connect so deeply within ourselves, it can have that profound experience that it feels like there are angels around you. Doing reflexology, working with people's feet, working with their the part of the body that hits the ground every day, that connects with the earth and pulls them in. But when you work with the likes of IET, and their slogan is taking the issues out of the tissues, you're actually, yeah, I love that. It actually, you realize that we are so full of issues that are embedded in us. And for a lot of people, particularly children or people who have had childhood issues, that when something happens to a child, they hold on to that emotion and it's in their tissues and they grow up with it. Now, if you ask them to try and release it, it's like losing their arm because they feel it's part of them. IET allows you to release that without feeling that you're actually losing part of your body, which I absolutely love doing that. And as I do this work with my clients now, it feels like I should have always been doing this. And I know when I look back to my days when I was selling products and I was stopping them from buying stuff, I was actually protecting them and allowing them to get the best out of what they were doing. And equally with my clients now, making sure that what they're being, not necessarily doing, is that for their better selves.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. I mean, somebody who's come from an entrepreneurial background, 40 years in business, so you've understood all of that, to suddenly transition across into something that I suppose a lot of business people, if they were listening now, are kind of scratching their heads and going, what? They don't understand it. And, has she lost her marbles, they're thinking. But yeah, explain more too, because I think it's important that somebody with your sort of business experience is now bringing sense to something that people would have a lot of skepticism about.
Yeah, because if you're going to be good at what you do, if you're going to be passionate about what you believe in, you have got to be true to yourself. And my journey down this whole route is actually being true to my inner passions of what I was always meant to be doing. To describe a little bit further on that, Alec, I suppose I'll bring you forward a couple of years, and my introduction to flower and vibrational essences probably is what I call the icing on the cake. I learned all the different modalities, and I was able to help people physically and emotionally in terms of Reiki and integrated energy therapy. But for anyone who doesn't know what a flower essence is, you possibly have heard of Rescue Remedy. Edward Bach was alive 100 years ago when he first introduced them. But what they do is they balance our emotions. Now, every physical pain has an emotional base. So say coming into the studio today, I tripped over and hurt my big toe. And I'm going, oh, the pain of that was really sore. And I don't see you then, Alec, for say 6 months. And the next time I meet you, you say, oh, the day you were here, you hurt your toe. What's that like? And I'm going, oh, the pain of that. Now the pain's long gone. But my emotions are still holding on to that pain, and it feels real. What essences do is they allow us to release that emotion that's holding us back from being our true selves, for living our true lives. And there is an essence for every emotion possible, be it fear, anxiety, trepidation. There's an essence for courage, for strength. There's an essence really for everything. I work with a whole load of different essences, oak essence being my favorite. And when I think about oak essence, it's like this shower of calm just comes down over me, and everything in my world is right. I'm not having, all those internal arguments. Oh, I should have done this, I should have done that, blah, 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 that goes on. When I'm with oak, everything is just right.
So I think people like myself and those in business probably need a bouquet of these essences.
Well, that's the beauty of the qualification I have, Alec, is that I'm a practitioner. And so what I do is I actually combine essences. So for instance, you come to me with a problem. They're generally just the symptoms, like I can't sleep. But there's a whole range of emotions tied up. Why can't you sleep? because you're afraid to go to sleep, or you're afraid what's happening the next day, or there's mental chatter going on in your head, numerous different things. So what I do is I pick an essence for each of those aspects and combine you with the perfect bottle just for you. So you actually get to the nub of the problem rather than just dealing with the symptoms. And I know that I was listening to some statistics recently in the UK last year, over a 3-month period, 22 million prescriptions were prescribed for antidepressants. Now, that to me is shock, horror. It's like, yes, there are a place for antidepressants in this world, but a gentle essence might have been just what they needed rather than popping pills.
The gentle essence is what the doctor didn't order when it should have been.
Yes, and the beauty is that they can work alongside. They're not exclusively
complementary.
Complementary, absolutely complementary.
Just as we go into our last, believe it or not, half minute, where can people find out more about this? Because it's a fascinating topic, and I'm sure people would like to know more.
I'm on rubyrui.co.uk as my business. And if anybody would like to contact me, I can give them I'll give you my details.
And is it Ruby Rua? Is that what you said? Or UB?
Yeah, RUBY,
yes.
RUA. And I'll just quickly explain why that name is there. I was once given a sunflower to grow from seed. And instead of the bright yellow one, I went for the ruby red one. The bright yellow is the light out there that we follow, but the ruby red, or the Rua, is the light within that gets us, that keeps our passion going and lights us up and gives us that joie de vivre to actually take on each day.